Good afternoon. This is the Guam Election Commission regular meeting. It is Tuesday, September 13th, 2022, 12:18 p.m. We are in the GEC Conference Room, Suite 205, Oka Building, Tamuning, Guam. This meeting is now called to order. We have a quorum present. To my left, we have Commissioner Carissa Pangilinan, Commissioner Joseph Mofnis. To my right, we have Vice Chairman Jerry Crisostomo, Commissioner Antonio Gumatautau, Commissioner Benny Pinella, Independent Commissioner Pat Seville. Also present with us is our legal counsel, Vincent Camacho, and our Executive Director, Maria Pangilinan. Maria, certification of public notice, please.
They were published September 6th and September 8th in the Daily Post.
Need a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Right. Motion to approve made by Commissioner Pinella, seconded by Commissioner Mofnis. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. We need a motion to approve the minutes of August 25th, 2022. This is our regular meeting. If everybody's had a chance to, yes, ma'am. Motion to approve? Right. Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Gumatautau to approve the minutes of August 25th, 2022, GC regular meeting, seconded by Commissioner Patrick Seville. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay? Ayes have it. A motion to approve August 27th.
So moved. Second.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of August 27th, 2022 by Commissioner Mofnis, seconded by Commissioner Pinella. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Correspondence, Maria?
Madam Chair, we received a letter on August 24th via email from the Office of the Inspector General, U.S. Election Assistance Commission, that Guam is scheduled for an audit. We have initial contact with them, and we are set up for a teleconference to discuss the audit schedule. The audit will be done remotely.
Do we have any questions for the Executive Director? Maria, is this a standard audit they do for our federal funds, or is there something that triggered the audit?
No, this is standard. It's randomly across the 50 states and the territories.
Okay.
Anything we need to do to be prepared for it?
No, I will find out what they want on the September 22nd teleconference.
I would ask if you do find out that there's any issue that is of any concern, please let the board know promptly.
Yes, yes, sir.
Will legal counsel be present at the discussion, during the discussion?
He can be, ma'am.
And we're up to date with our reporting, our federal reporting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Do we have any further questions for our Executive Director regarding the audit? Okay. Item 6, Maria, Executive Director's report.
The general election timeline appears starting on page 8. We are set to, if you take a look at the timeline, today we are looking to get the primary election results certified and the ratification of the nonpartisan candidates so we can start building the ballot. And ma'am, we switched the drawing of the placement of the ballot placement drawing from tomorrow to today. We've called up all the candidates and got in touch with all of them, so it'll be today at 2 o'clock.
Which elections are going to be pulled?
All of the non-partisan, so it's the Attorney General, Guam Education Board, and Consolidated Commission on Utilities, and then the Democrat and Republican
Legislature.
senators.
That's for clarification. Do we have any questions for Maria with regard to the timeline? Maria, any questions, commissioners? You're going to be holding training for precinct officials for all the precincts? Okay. Are we picking up the same individuals as precinct officials?
Ma'am, we sent out letters to the state party chairs to give them a deadline of, I believe, September 16th to submit their nominees, and we're welcoming some of the returnees. Yes.
Okay.
When is your training begin?
September 22nd.
Oh, 22nd.
I have, with regard to in-office early voting, right, that begins October 11th. Maria, can we use public service announcements, right, to get it out there? That I think this was brought up at one of our meetings, is to let the community know, especially the private sector, if they're not aware, of the law that allows individuals 2 hours of, is it 2 hours or 3? 2 hours of admin leave to go and vote. The general election is on Tuesday, November 8th. That is a work day for many, so that's something that should be out there. I would also like to indicate to the to employers that we have early voting, and we're encouraging early voting. And if I'm not mistaken, admin leave also applies to early voting, regardless if we change, extend the time or have it on a Saturday. If an individual wants to leave on a Wednesday to vote early, then admin leave, that policy or rule applies to giving an employee admin leave. Right, legal? I want us to be sure, and I want us to share that with the community to ensure that everybody, we had a lot of issues and calls from employees not being allowed to leave to vote.
So the 2-hour timeline applies even during the early voting period, right? But you just have to understand that if, for example, early voting takes place between 10 and 6, and the employee gets off at 5, they still have an hour to go vote, right? So they don't, it's really up to the employer. If someone's working between the hours of 10 to 6, and they need to go vote on that day for scheduling purposes, then they're entitled to the 2 hours. But if the election or their ability to vote is outside their schedule, the employer doesn't necessarily have to give them 2 hours. Right? So, and I think that's why we were trying to accommodate on the new early voting to open on Saturdays to try to, so it's just, if the person is working and the only time to vote is during that period of time, everyone's entitled, including the early voting period, to the 2-hour time, leave time.
So for me, it's just, I want a really good education campaign,
Yeah.
information campaign, so that employees and employers are aware,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't recall that discussion previous, where if they get off at 5, they still have 3 hours to vote, so an employer really, it really is dependent upon the employer, so that it doesn't affect operations, right? So we need to clarify that. Legal counsel, I'm going to ask you to really look into this, all right, to get better. Which brings me to, is it this, are we on this one? Yes, the general election for early voting, starting October 11th. We need to decide what it is that we're going to do at that point in time so that we start getting it out into the general public. So, do we discuss that now? Yes, right? We're on the timeline right now. So, for the general election, early voting, did you have a?
No, just in line with the legal counsel, I think we need to give those types of examples to employers, because if we leave it at the discretion of the employer, that may be a hindrance to the employee. Exactly what you said at 5 o'clock, I could say no. You know, you get off, you know, they want, or even at lunch, 10 to 12. But I think if we give those types of examples to the employers, especially the private sector employers. I know we had a campaign like that a while back. I saw it we had an ad, right, that had some of those examples to the employer. I don't know if there was maybe a news release, but I think we need to give some examples to the employers, Guam or federal or private.
What about, Madam Chair, if we look at doing election from 8 to 7 p.m.?
Yes, I think for early voting, you're talking about early voting? Okay. Early voting, we're looking at extending the hours and, of course, holding it on Saturday. We will not have, we are only going to have one early voting site.
Okay.
That would be the West End, as we did in the primary. It's just extending the hours. During the primary, it was, what is it, 9 to 6?
It was 10 to 6, yes. Tuesday through Friday.
I'm just concerned that, you know, especially if you're coming from the southern villages coming up, it's going to take a while. And so, yeah, I'd like to give them as much option, as much leeway as we can.
If we're doing it on Saturday, I would like to leave it 10 to 6 and do Saturday, open on Saturday as well, from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
Yeah. I
10
think
to 3 o'clock.
again, if they're working, you know, they're private sector employees, you know, that could be an issue.
Marie, is there a reason why we can't go 10 to 7, Tuesday through Friday?
We can, but during the primary election, sometimes we're leaving the office at midnight. As we know, we have to reconcile before we leave the office. You know, 6 is a decent time for us to get ready to start. If I'm okay, you know, it'll be okay for 7 o'clock. It just means that our staff will be leaving much later at night. And if we open, I mean, let us know if you want us to stay open until 7 o'clock. But just so you know, we reconcile every night. We don't leave until we know that we have that many ballots, as that many signatures. And sometimes it takes us a bit longer, especially on the last week. No matter what, the last week always brings us the crowd.
Yeah, I think because we're talking the general election, it'd be prudent for us to, you know, approve that.
Commissioner Pinelli, commissioners were okay going Tuesday to Friday, 10 to 6, and opening on Saturday, 10 to 3.
There's always election day.
Yeah.
That's the real day.
Again, because we're dealing with the general election, I think the numbers are going to increase. So, the more we can front load the operation, the easier it is for the back end.
Yeah. All right, so do you need a motion? No, we're good.
Sure, ma'am.
All right, so we need a motion for early voting, which is going to be held at the Westin Resort Guam in Tumon from Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then Saturday from 10 to 3. October 11th to
November 3rd.
November 3rd. Apologies.
Ma'am, do we close on holidays?
Oh, there's holidays?
November 2nd.
What is the law state? We have to do 30 days?
No, we should be,
For early voting? Oh, okay. What holidays are coming up? All Souls. Oh. Is that a government holiday?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. I don't get a holiday.
Okay, Madam Chair, you ready for the motion?
Yeah, are we gonna open on the holiday?
I think we,
it's also
That's
Day.
double time?
Yes, and by that time, they're already doing overtime, so it's going to be double time and a half for the holiday, for the staff. And it's All Souls Day, just so you know.
yeah, I think we should let the staff have that holiday off.
Yeah.
I think we should have some budget consideration here too.
Yeah.
So we're not open on
No.
holiday? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move a motion for early voting October 11th to November 4th. I'm sorry, 3rd. That we open Tuesday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. In addition, we'd like to make sure that we allow GEC staff to be closed on holiday November 1st,
November 1st,
2nd, November
oh,
2nd.
2nd,
Okay.
Wednesday. 2nd is the holiday.
Okay.
November 2nd.
Yeah, it's a holiday. Oh, second motion then.
Motion number 4?
Yeah.
Seconded by, motion made by Commissioner Penal. Seconded by Commissioner Moffitt, with regard to the early voting schedule. Right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Right, the ayes have it. Maria, early voting starts October 11th, Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 3.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, to add a little footnote here. In case, we see the numbers moving incredibly higher, or it's something that tells us that we need to take a look at, we should extend the hours if need be. Okay?
I think that has to be a motion because we just passed it.
We just passed
Yeah, no, we passed the motion, but just as a footnote, as we proceed and we're looking at the numbers, because Maria will be providing us those numbers. And if there is an increase of numbers, and it may be prudent for us to extend even up to 7 p.m.
Subject to the need.
Yep.
Is that okay to go?
Yeah, let's take a look at it. Yeah.
It's important is because of the funding, right? So you need to authorize that additional expenditure. So I would prefer that's done through a motion in the future if you decide to extend it.
Yeah, and again, the workload's going to dictate that, right? If there really is, a reason to do it, let's do it. If not, then, we're okay with where we're at. I just want to put that as a footnote. We need to do it.
Take that up at another meeting.
Sure.
if needed, right?
Yeah.
You can keep that as another future motion.
Yeah. It can be amended.
Questions or discussions regarding the timeline?
Madam Chair, just to know, just a reminder that come September 23rd, it's our due date to send out our off-island and Uocava ballots.
That's the start date? Yeah. To stand, that's the, okay.
So what it is all the requests we get up to 3 days before September 23rd has to go out on September 23rd. So the primary election requests, they would have, most of them have checked off general elections, so we would have more ballots to send out this time than the general election, than the primary election.
So if they did not check off the general election, then they would have to apply for an absentee.
That's correct.
It's not an automatic,
That's correct, but most,
Assumption that-
yes, you're right, yes.
we're going to send them a general. Okay. Okay, if there's no questions on the timeline, and Maria, we can take this up again, right, in the next meeting? Okay, I'm okay. If there's no other discussion, Commissioner? Right, timeline, right? Budget, 2023 budget?
Madam Chair, the budget was signed into law by the governor. It's in your packet. It's almost the last page. We received 1.7 for the fiscal year '23, and then we received the 602,000 for the primary election expenses. So I'll need to work with the Department of Administration to figure how to use up those funds.
I have a question. Sorry. Were you done? Did any of the commissioners have any questions before? Precinct official payments. So precinct officials are considered vendors,
Yes.
correct? Did we submit the request for payment for our precinct officials from the primary? Have we submitted that request?
They've already been paid.
They've already been paid?
Yes.
Ooh,
Yeah.
record. When were they paid?
Starting last Friday. Yeah, so the reason for the big deal with the vendor payments is, the vendor application form is that with the vendor application forms, most of them a lot of them, not most, a lot of them switch to direct deposit, which is much easier for everybody.
I understand direct deposits didn't get paid until today?
The hard checks were,
Friday.
the paper checks were Friday, because I guess there's a deadline for the bank to receive the EFTs, so they didn't make the 3 o'clock cutoff, so, yeah.
They were paid.
They were paid.
They were paid, which is actually record time from previous, right? So, and we're preparing, excuse me, for the general election to ensure that we have the funds to cover the payment for the new precinct officials. And that's something we can address.
Yeah, so I would like to let the board, the commission know that we did request for 2.1 million for fiscal year '23 budget. We only got 1.7. So as we go further along, I'll keep you posted on the appropriation. And so I asked our legal counsel about how do we spend the $602,000, and it's strictly for primary 2022 primary election expenses. So I'll just work with DOA to figure out which ones can be charged and how much more can we use. Yeah.
Do we have any questions for Maria regarding the budget? We're okay? I had a question, but I can't remember. Item 6C, election campaign contributions and expenditures.
Madam Chair, so the reports were due September 12th, which was yesterday. I'm sorry, I don't have, do we have it updated up until yesterday? No. We will update you at the next meeting, ma'am, about all the ones that submitted.
Okay. For the most part, everybody submitted their complaint.
Yes.
I did have a question. I apologize. I have to go back. This is in reference to the payment to precinct officials. Just for clarification, and our precinct officials will be paid if they've served the entire time. If at any point in time throughout the day, whether they were there for 8 hours and left in the last 3 hours, they didn't finish counting, or whatever the case may be, these precinct officials do not get paid. That is an abandonment of their position. Am I right, Maria?
That's correct, ma'am.
And it is clear to these precinct officials, when you work with them and you train them, that you must stay the entire day.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'd like to take up at some point in time precinct officials, and it has been a constant challenge for both parties, and just to get precinct officials to come out, right? So that's, I think, a discussion that we need to have sometime soon with regard to how to address that. It's kind of been an ongoing conversation. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I just wanted to add on to that. I think part of the challenge for us at GEC is trying to make this an incentive for people to come out and be a precinct official. And because of, today's inflations and, goods of services, I think it might be prudent for us to take a look at bumping that pay upwards to maybe around $500. I think that would be a good incentive for people to come out. Because if you're going to work all day, it would make sense, that you'd make a little bit of money to offset the cost.
I've had discussions with our oversight chair, and you know how difficult it is for us to keep going back. It was, I think, in 2012 or maybe 14, it went from 170 to 350. So the discussion is that we, instead of having to go back to the legislature, it may be prudent that the commissioners decide how much to make and update it then. And they were open to that discussion too.
That has to be changed in the law, because the law
That's
states
why
that.
we were, that was the initial, well, not initial, but that was the last discussion we had with regard to precinct officials.
I think you can change the law and give discretionary authority to the board up to a certain amount. After that, I think it has to go to the legislature for approval.
I guess that we can have legal counsel research and provide language, right?
Yeah,
They can
I've
bring
seen some
before the-
agencies where they have some discretionary authority, 5, 10%, but then, anything above that, because you're talking public monies, expenditures, it has to go through the legislature.
I think at some point we need to join or add a thread in here that the continued difficulty of finding precinct officials and keep raising the rates is not really, I agree with Commissioner Panawan that they should be raised, but I think we also need to start looking at going to complete electronic, the electronic voting machines, because that's going to reduce the time demands on the precinct officials, particularly after the polls close.
I agree, Horn. I also want to, this is probably a good time to bring up how we might want to consider, I know it's in the law, is also combining precincts. We have a precinct, Hagåtña. It's a small precinct, 300 57 voters, 370 voters or something,
Yep.
or 500 voters. And that's five, it's difficult to find precinct officials as it is. So for these small, I'm getting a lot of eyes and eyebrows raised. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm just putting it out there. That's the reality of the situation, is we need to take a look at the smaller precincts and maybe moving them into another one, increasing the, 1,000? Once you've hit 1,000, to start considering opening another precinct. So those are things that I think, Maria, we should start looking at and preparing, right?
Madam Chair, I totally agree with you. I think, all options should be put on the table, and that we should, take into consideration. Of course, automation will greatly help. Increasing the amount that we're paying precinct officials will help. Looking at combining different precincts will help. I think all those options are very viable, and we should take a look at that. If anything else, look at maybe getting in a third-party consultant to do a review, a feasibility study on this possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, the Bill McCullough from ESS, he said a lot of jurisdictions now are using regional voting precincts, regional voting centers. And I know that would be a big adjustment, that we're wedded and emotionally bonded with our own village precincts, but he was describing how it really is more efficient, and it reduces the demand for precinct officials. So, yeah, something to think about.
I would also, put it out that, we should be looking for additional monies that is available in the federal government, for us to, again, look at these different solutions that might be able to assist us. There's money that's available. I think it's just, we need to go out and go get them and apply for those.
What is our return rate for primary? I think this was asked earlier, right? The return rate of your precinct officials from the primary to this general election. Do we know? What is the return rate of precinct officials from the primary to the general for this past primary? Whoa.
Um,
Some villages have full groups that aren't willing or unable to come back, like the Redmond, only one is able to do it, so we need to.
yeah.
I mean, on election night, some of the comments that I overheard as they were exiting is never again would I return. So regardless of what we pay them, they're not going to come back. So it's a problem.
And, and to the commission's credit is, we tried to make it as efficient for them and as easy as possible, right, with regard to the processes, but it's just really a long day. All right, so those are things, Maria, if you can, look into researching and seeing what we can do to address that. I think it'll help. So, all right. Do we have any other discussion? We were on, we're now on old business, correct, Maria?
Yes, yes.
Old business, primary election, summary of election day issues. Okay. We do the budget, election campaign fund. I don't see election day issues, Ryan.
We don't, yeah, it's there, brief on the agenda, but there's nothing inside there, ma'am, in the packet. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, page 13. Yeah, the page 13, ma'am, is just a preliminary report of our expenses for the primary election. And again, I say it's preliminary because we haven't received some invoices.
Man, I had some notes. I had some notes regarding the election day, election day issues and concerns. Do any of the commissioners have anything to bring up to Maria with regard to that? Anything that needs to be improved upon for the general election?
Couple of things, again, this is overhearing some of the voters, when it comes to the voting machine, because it lists only so many people on the screen, and then you have to go to page 2. Some of them didn't realize that there was a page 2. So I think that's a concern that we should take a look at, and see how we can maybe reduce the font or reduce it so that we can get everybody on one page.
Oh, go ahead. I spoke with we had discussion prior with the people that program, our vendor who programs the Express. I had more discussion this morning with them, and they're going to look into it. But as I had, it's the Express vote is limited to that kind of setup. It cannot do two columns where you can choose the Democrat and the Republican on that. It has to be all Democrats and then all Republicans. If we change it to something else, that means the ballot design of the paper ballot needs to change as well. They together are hitched into the programming of the tabulator. So the conversation continues. They're looking into it over there. Jose, our ballot pro here, continues to talk with them. At this time, this is what we have, and ES&S is looking to minimize that, but what we have as of this time is what's in front of you with the yellow draft. Right behind it is what we have for the general election. It's the draft for the general election.
Do we have an idea on how many people voted on the express vote?
Oh, man, Benny, Commissioner, we know that toward the end, at early voting, most of them were going to the express vote. We'll get that report. We'll get that number for you.
Okay. Do we also have an idea about the number of undervotes on the express votes?
I don't know if we can get that. We'll try.
Yeah, because the ballot is 15, right? So, and we saw some, as we were doing this yesterday, some people will bullet vote, and so there is definitely an undervote number. Not everybody's voting total 15.
It comes out.
We have
It
that.
comes out as undervotes on that report that we get, but it
Yeah.
doesn't.
But for the express machine,
Yeah, but it doesn't
I
separate
don't
the
think
paper
it does.
versus.
I'll look to see if they have it, but I don't know.
yeah, it all goes in. But if we
Yeah.
can get an idea, if a percentage, right? You get an idea if there was an undervote percentage in the express voting machine versus a ballot paper vote, it will really give us a good idea on that question on page 2. Is that really a valid situation or not? People don't go to page 2 because they didn't realize it.
The general election is more challenging because they're going to keep scrolling.
That many times, yeah. Yeah,
But they can't get out of,
until they finish.
they have to go through all the pages.
That's right.
Once you've started the ballot, you
You-
couldn't just look at the first page and say, that's it, done. You
And
have to scroll through all the pages.
It also informs you It also informs you that you didn't choose 15, so do you want to go back? It has that prompt, like, do you want to see more?
Okay, yeah.
And it's very clear on the draft that we have in front of you.
But Maria, I'm still not clear, and if you could get, I think this is a very legitimate concern that's been
Will do.
raised. And if we just need bigger screens,
Oh,
but why can't we display the ballot side by side? The parties side by side?
it has to do with the coding. So,
Can't you get some little kids to recode it? You know, I mean, it's what 9-year-olds do now. No, but I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like we can't be the only jurisdiction that has this concern.
Virgin Islands don't have paper ballots, so I can check with them, but I haven't really heard it. I'm sure there are other people, and Virgin Islands has been using express votes now for 3 election cycles, and their cycles are like us. I can check with her.
Okay.
The Virgin Island uses express vote expressly?
Yes, ma'am.
paper?
No paper.
Cheaper.
And they have 3 islands, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Something to consider.
I think we should send a delegation there.
Yep.
Investigate.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Look at that.
They're-
Puerto Rico, that's an interesting,
All right. I do have concerns from election day, right? So commissioners come up with, we go out, we visit these precincts, we come up with concerns. What I'd like to do, Maria, sorry, we have concerns is, what I'd like to do is probably, and pursuant to Commissioner Seville's request as well, is to set up a working group to be able to address these concerns. Nothing serious. Setup, the drive-through setup at League One Terrace was not working at all, inefficient. Setups in the classroom with regard to the precinct officials, how they are, where they're situated, where the ballots are situated, where poll watchers are situated, things like that, things of that nature. I do have a concern about, we had a voter, absentee, sent it in, was returned to the voter. I know this firsthand because the voter was my sister, who's out on medical. The label was returned to her because the return label was missing, fell off when they sent it back, right? So those are things that we need to address. We need to take a look at. Like, I was floored when her ballot didn't make it, right? And to find out why. So those little things, those details are important. And I want to set up a working group. Commissioner Seville is happy to be a part of that group, and if we can get other volunteers, right, okay. Anybody else? Good? All right.
let's do it.
So we have our working group to address these issues, come up with solutions, and, make the general election run as smoothly as possible, and a good voter experience, right, for our community. So our working group will consist of Commissioner Pat Seville, Commissioner Pinella, and Commissioner Pangilinan. All right? Any questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to circle back to, against express vote for the general election. This is something that I'm thinking about. So when you go to vote on the express machine, is the set of Republican ballots come up first, or is the set of the Democrat ballot comes up first? No, this is for the general.
Oh,
It's right here.
oh, in the general.
It
For
is
the
not,
general.
it is not, it's going to come up like this because the Democrats are in the majority.
Well, again, it makes, it makes a difference, because there is preference, right?
Yeah.
If the Democrats come up first before the Republicans,
Yep.
the voter gets to see that set of ballots,
Okay.
as opposed when you have ballots side by side.
So,
I don't know how the commissioners feel, but when I was looking through that, it's just not going to be a good thing, is if we cannot get it side by side, if we cannot get it to mirror the actual ballot, right, to here, I don't know that we should use the express vote.
I agree.
I would love to, maybe for reconciling ballots, okay. Got a torn ballot, we've got to mimic it,
Damage
okay.
it, right?
But for public utilization, Maria, I'm concerned that it would be viewed that way, that it's unfair, right? I mean, unless you can make it available, but they need to know that this is not, it does not mimic the.
So, okay, because lots of voters spoke highly of the use of the express votes. So a couple of things that the staff and I have put together is, we will have more detailed instruction. And then we will also have inside the voting booth with the, prompts or exactly the instructions that's there, and maybe some other things. It speeds up the voting time, and I think I want to make sure that those people that expressed how happy they were to use the machine and they want to come back to vote early and use the machines again, we should hear from them as well. The other thing with regard to the Democrats coming first, and if you notice on the paper ballot, the Democrats are on the left. And if you remember, the reason being is because what we've done from long time ago is whoever is the majority in the legislature, that's who appears first on the ballot.
Okay, I don't think the instruction is the issue. The instructions, just for clarification, is not the issue. Great, you give them all instructions. I think what we're talking about, and we have to be very clear, is unlike the paper ballot where you have side by side, it's one shot, you get to see it, you get to choose left or right. But if you're doing it on the express machine, who comes up first, who comes up second, there is a preference there. And so like the senators with the lower numbers, they're not going to have a fair shake on that, will they? Because they're not all on one side, because they're on the bottom. Whereas opposed, you put them side by side and you do the whole 15, I think, there's no question that there's parity.
Can we line them up by number? So that both number ones, both number twos, both number threes, right?
I can't, it's all coding. They can't code it where it's going to mimic the ballot, right? You're talking about the first screen, you'll have number one Democrat,
1, 2, and 3, 'cause
number
it's
one
3 per
Republican,
screen.
number one.
Yeah.
Cannot do that either.
We can't do that. 1 and 1, 2 and 3.
So, and then the express machine is only used for early voting. During early voting, right?
Still don't have a significant amount of voters show up for the early voting. So in the primary, you have to pick a ballot, right? So the difference with the general election is, well, past the gubernatorial, we're going to have 30.
Yeah.
Scroll down, first the Democrats,
Yeah.
right? Then the Republicans, write-ins, whatever. And that's going to cause, I think, frustration. Instruction, I don't think instruction is the issue, but a lot of voters don't read instruction. Look at how many
check marks.
look at how many of these circles they don't look at.
Spoiled ballots, we had to do, right?
So, yeah.
And there is a preference for the lower numbers, right? So versus the last few numbers.
Commissioner Benny, what numbers are you talking about? Oh, the placement.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's random.
right. And so, that is fine, but we want to try to keep everything as parity as much as possible, because that will be an issue that will come up to us, I'm sure of it.
So the ballot right now will be, electronic ballot will be 14 screens. That's a lot. Yeah.
I guarantee the voter will stop at some point.
I'm done here. Yeah. Yeah. Maria, the other, I mean, I think the fundamental problem is what Commissioner Benny just brought up. But you know how you go into some offices, they'll have like a TV screen with like instructions? Oops. And it seems like maybe we could do that for folks waiting in line if they're going to use the electronic machine, is have an instruction that really emphasizes, you know, yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I tend to agree with you that we should not use this for general election unless we can get it fixed, and not for early voting either. You know, I think we use it to, you know, again, take care of the spoil ballots and the ones that need to be reproduced. I think that machine will be good.
How was it done 4 years ago? Didn't we use this 4 years ago? The voting, the express vote? We didn't use it?
Yeah, yes, 2 years ago we used
Not
it.
for the general election?
For the general election we did, but it wasn't as, if you remember, we had curbside voting.
Right.
And most people voted downstairs, yeah. You know, one of the things that was, that our experience is over at the early vote center was we really didn't hear any complaints about I understand the concern about 14 and the disparity, but if we can leave it as a choice, because a lot of our voters were happy to come back to use it again. I mean, that's what they were saying.
We still have a little bit of time, right?
Yes.
Work with the company to see if something can be done. Seriously, I mean, they should be able to do something with regard to coding. All right, and then we can make a determination there. If they can absolutely not do anything, the commissioners can make that, you know, decision.
Vote on it then.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of that concern, you know, honestly came to like us. You know, I don't think they directed it to the Guam Election Commission, but I know they directed it to the commissioners individually.
But the concern also wasn't there because in the primary you were choosing the party and only the party was coming up. So we wouldn't have heard it then anyway.
Okay. So Marie, you need to look into that. We do have a meeting coming up again towards the end of September. I think by that time you should have something, some hard discussion, solid discussion with, is it ES&S? ES&S, yeah. All right. So do we have any other discussion regarding that matter? All right. Primary election, item I2, Executive Director. Maria?
On election day, most of the calls that came into into the office were about transfers. So we had 87, I believe, of provisional ballots, and all because they were transfers. So, and almost, I think all of them were from the DMV, motor voter. So they were able to vote. I did hear of some people that couldn't vote because the provisional voting process was longer and they had to make it to the soccer game. But that's the majority of calls that came into the office. During election night at the reconciliation table, where all 300 some precinct officials were there, we had some people who abandoned their position. I think that night we had 5, but even at the precinct themselves, there were probably a couple that left while they were still at the precinct. And some we believe had health issues. They didn't let us know about it, but that's what happens. And we stuck to our guns about, making sure that the ballots came back to the custody of the Guam Election Commission before they left. Another challenge that we had with the precinct officials is with the express votes, and if you remember, we were there until 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and one of our last precincts, at Station 5, we received the ballots, the cast ballots there. So, and that's the last station. There are 5 stations at the University of Guam at our election return center, and the last station is Station 5. So what happens is they're sitting there for hours, the precinct officials are sitting there for hours trying to reconcile. Most important is the number of signatures equals the number of cast ballots. So in their rush to get out, a couple of the precincts, they counted the ballots. They did count the ballots, and we show on their paperwork that they did balance. But when we're looking at the unofficial tabulated results, these ballots were counted and accounted for by the precincts, the 2 precincts, but they were not reflected on the tabulation of results. So those we found, and we corrected it by making sure that they are included in the tabulation results. I think that's, at this time, that's all I have to report. I hope come general election, we're not there that long. We have 1 ballot sheet, and so that should make it a little shorter, we hope.
Do you have any questions for?
Madam Chair, 2 things. I'm going to take the liberty of, on behalf of the commissioners, to thank you and the staff for doing a good job. I think they were very impressive in handling their responsibilities, and like to recognize that. The second thing is, I think, and this is a suggestion, we should probably look at developing checklists for every process, and so that they have a list, just like like pilots have. They have a checklist, or you deploy, you have a checklist. Everything is accounted for, and they know it by checklist. The written instructions are good, don't get me wrong, but I think we can turn those into a checklist that can be standardized and that everybody functions and does the same thing. And I think that will eliminate a lot of unnecessary, work on our part. Okay?
Thank you, Commissioner Pinella.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other commissioners?
I think one of the bigger concerns that I ran into was, because when I was visiting the precincts, is that it didn't seem like the precinct officials knew that the role were not to turn voters away. And I started to think, how many precincts did I not show up and meet a voter who was trying to vote, whose name wasn't there for the motor voter reason, and had been turned away, and for whatever reason didn't make it to the poll, right? And I know you brought that up. So there were several occasions where I was there, and perfect timing, I guess, and the person had been standing there and was being told that they're not registered. And they're like, I've been voting here for 25 years. Okay, so I pull it up on the GEC website, find out where they are registered, inform them. But the precinct official had already told them that they couldn't vote. So, that happened to me several times, and And I said, you got to let them vote, and GEC will sort it out. We'll figure out where they're, where they really are registered. That's the provisional process. So I think we ran into these challenges too because we had a lot of new precinct officials, right? And although they do get training, I don't know what happens along the way, and maybe they're nervous the day of or whatever. There's just so many things to remember. We ran into a lot of issues, even with them knowing that the polls were to open at 7 and not at 8, that kind of stuff. So I think expressing certain things or emphasizing certain things during the training, right? Like, we're here to provide access to the voter when they make that effort to come to a precinct, that kind of stuff. Just kind of emphasizing that during the training. And I know you guys do a good job and people just forget, but that's part of that checklist, I think, that Commissioner Pinal is talking about.
Yeah, I just
You
wanted
put
to
it in
piggyback
bold
on
and
that,
big.
right? In case, this happens, you follow this checklist.
Yeah.
In case this happens, follow this.
Your default.
So, Madam Chair, so how do we fix this motor voter issue? It's supposed to ease. It's supposed to be easy, but it was a disaster in the primary. When you have voters calling us or experiencing that they got turned away, that's a disaster. And there are voters, there are probably more than one or two, that they said, go to Barragata because your address is Barragata. That's his GMF Guam main facility is his mailing address, and he was sent to Barragata. The guy always voted in MTM, for instance. But that motor voter program is a disaster. And it appears to be a disaster in this primary. So how do we fix this so that it doesn't become an issue in the general election? Because I guarantee it'll still be an issue in the general election. People will still be turned away unnecessarily because of their address or voting district. But it doesn't seem to be working.
We're going to have a lot of provisions.
Madam Chair, a while back I had brought this up, right, for us to consider. When we look at the voter rolls, there's a lot of P.O. boxes and, I think we need to really seriously look at physical addresses. Physical addresses, I think, is important. I think at this day and age, we have, road signs now. We have people get home delivery. I think we shouldn't be having 10 people with the same P.O. boxes,
That
The law.
happens at motor, it's the law that we use.
The law that we use, the mailing address. They do give us on the motor voter program, they do give us the residence address right on the application form for driver's license or Guam ID. I cannot tell you I have all the answers, but one of our challenges is we still don't have full access to the system at DMV. We hope that's forthcoming, but we don't know. There's a light at the end of the tunnel where that is. I think one good thing that comes from Motor Voter, and it's not a big thing, but those mailing addresses get updated on both, Commissioner Benny, on both the driver's license and the Guam ID, and on our signature roster. What appears by law is the mailing address. We don't put residence address on the signature roster.
I know we have, for instance, I live in Dededo. I'm registered in Dededo, but my address is GMF Barragata. And but I was on that roll, but I've heard of people that day that got turned away, weren't given a provisional ballot, and nobody should have been turned away, not one.
Vice Chair, that's stressed in the training, that nobody should be turned away. Everybody has a right to vote. If they don't have an ID, if they're not registered in the precinct you're in, you cannot turn them away. That's what the provisional ballots are for. We know that in a couple of precincts, we got the calls from the voters themselves. We had 3 people come into the office to express that they were turned away, but did they vote? Oh, and they did not vote. 3 of them went to a specific precinct and they didn't vote.
So just make that a part of your checklist and your training, is that no voter gets turned away. That's it. That's just the bottom line.
At the end of the day, is this, does this require legislation, you know, so that we can transition from PO boxes to physical addresses? You know, because that will be the best way to resolve these issues.
So Maria is going to work on changes to the law pursuant to our discussions, right? And to help change it and make it a little easier. Yeah, that whole motor voter thing this past primary was just awful. All right, do we have any? Maybe, Maria, you can work with DMV with regard to, I don't know, putting signs up, educating the people who are there to check in the box that, look, your registration's going to, your voting place is going to change pursuant to this. As our vice chair said, voters don't read. They don't read. I read the thing, and it says right there, and the signature. So, yeah.
Up there, ma'am?
We actually, on election day, experienced someone that says, I'm 70 years old. I voted here before ever. You expect me to read everything? Well, yes, but, you know, we understand. All right? So,
Madam
get
Chair,
that done.
this one, and I'd like to echo what you just said, because I encountered one of the voters that I think was in Jotna. And one of the questions that he asked is that when he went and renewed his driver's license, he checked mark where he was staying, but one of the questions that came up is that he was not aware that that's what's going to happen. So I guess if you put a sign up there on the MV or motor vehicle that says if you check mark, that's where you're going to vote. And he's been voting in Jotna for 30 years, but now he has to go down to Talafofa and vote. So I guess one of the questions there is that they just check mark that and then that was it, nothing else. Yeah.
Primary, we're on item 2A, certification of 2022 primary election results.
The results are in front of you. The unofficial results are in front of you, dated September 12th. I'd like to ask the commissioners to certify the primary election, ma'am.
Just for clarification, Maria, the Guam Election Commission, your team, we've taken a look and we've tabulated the number of tabulated cast ballots match those that were counted and verified by our precinct officials and the signatures. Okay. So
correct.
all is in order.
Yes.
And yesterday, what was counted and added to the not counted, but tabulated and verified were the absentee ballots and provisional ballots, correct? Anything else?
Yeah, no, ma'am, it's the, yes, you're right, it's the absentee and the qualified provisionals.
Absentee and qualified provisionals.
Yes.
If anybody voted via provisional and they weren't qualified, it's usually because they weren't registered to vote.
That's correct.
Right, that's the reason, okay. All right. Do we have any questions with regard to the results?
Madam
before-
Chair, I have a quick question, and this is just, again, a matter of procedure here. If you didn't fill out your Election Commission reports, financials, do we still certify them? They're not in compliance. The expenditure reports. If, you know, they didn't fill out the blocks as required, you know, I don't think that's fair to the other candidates.
Legal? That's part of their responsibility.
Correct.
Right, as when
They
they've
have
come
to
into
report,
office, they have to report. but that's not necessarily a qualification or a disqualification, a reason to disqualify them. It's part of your responsibility, you should get it done. But what's required for you to run is, it's not a, it's part of, explain it.
But if there is no consequences, then we really don't need to be putting it as a requirement then.
Oh, no, there's not that there's no consequences. There are consequences, but that's up to the commission to express those consequences. And you've done that before. But at the end of the day, you need to get that report, and I think it's done after the general election, where you make the determination on how to present those consequences to those candidates that failed to abide by the reporting requirements.
Reporting requirement.
But it is not a disqualification factor to move on to the general.
Okay.
I won't say anything.
We have for this primary, has everybody filed their final report? Because it was due, when was that due, on the 6th or 12th?
September, no,
Yeah,
just
12th.
September 12th. So we will get back to you. I believe all of them
And-
filed, but I need to verify.
Right. And in previous elections, have we had candidates that just failed to file one report or the other? I mean, I think Commissioner Penal has a point that I think we should make it a
Well,
requirement. If it is a habitual issue, then, but if it really isn't, then, you know,
here's something to consider, right? If you're a PAC and you don't file your report, are you still allowed to continue to raise money and get contributions? You know, and go against a candidate or go for a candidate? You know, and you didn't fill out your requirements?
That's really the commissioner's role to discuss and to impose penalties as prescribed by the law. I've never seen it done, but under the law, the commission has the authority to impose the penalties for failing to file, or even to fail to file as a PAC.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some sort of check and balance, you know, because if it goes unfettered, right, you can just continue to raise money and accept contributions, and, you know, and you're not accountable, especially as a PAC.
Well, that's under your purview.
Yes, yes. Again, something that we should consider or address. Should we move to freeze the fundraising? Should we? I don't know. I'm just, you know, I'm putting it out there for the commissioners to.
Well, I think you need to be very specific in what you want to impose and on a specific entity that you want to impose this on, and rather than just a blanket. So I think something needs to come before you in order to discuss the issues and give due diligence or give the other side the right to present their side to you as well, rather than create a blanket prohibition to move forward. Because there is a due process, right? And so a complaint comes to you, you address, you investigate, you make a determination on what to do. But part of that investigation includes obtaining information from or confirming what the complaint is about. But to make blanket, decisions without knowing specifically what's going on, I just don't think that's prudent at this time.
No, you're absolutely right. But Maria did mention that there are some people who were not in compliance, who didn't file. That's who I'm addressing. Now, we don't have that information in front of us,
But to that, Maria, there's also in the law that states they have up until a certain time?
Deadline is September.
The deadline was yesterday. Okay.
We need to go back and make sure that, I cannot tell you that maybe we might have missed something, so we'll give you a report on at the next meeting, ma'am.
A report with regard to who filed and when they
Yes,
filed.
yes, if you don't mind.
I think it's a matter of ethics, right, that we address this head-on. If you don't file, there's gotta be some sort of a response from the Guam Election Commission. We can't just let that slide.
We have.
Addressed it before. I mean, I agree with you, but we've addressed it before.
Yeah, but this particular one that Maria just mentioned, right, that there is and I don't know who it is, but, somebody didn't file their report. So is that a candidate? Is that a PAC? Is that?
So when we investigate, and this leads us down that road again with regard to the commissioner's authority to investigate, is we can't even say we're investigating. Correct? Legal? Like, we can do this. The commissioners can do this. We can come together and make this decision. These things are brought to our attention. There's a complaint. It's brought to our attention. Then the commissioners can investigate. But at that point in time, the investigation takes place.
The investigation is confidential unless the individual or entity that's being investigated agrees that it's made in a public forum. And until such time that the decision of the commission either goes, if there's probable cause that's found for a violation, and it gets reported to the Attorney General's office, that's when it becomes public, right? But if they find no violation, then that remains confidential.
Okay.
Maria will prepare the information for us, and we'll make a decision then, right? I don't disagree, Commissioner Pinella,
Right.
right?
I'm thinking of, we need to protect, the board, the commission, right?
Of course.
And so,
And yeah, we have conducted investigations, but
especially when you're talking about public filings, this is a public filing.
okay. Legal, can you just look into that a little more and just, we'll prepare it for discussion with the commissioners. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Okay.
My apologies. I need to leave in a few minutes. Could
Sure.
we
Certified.
take up the certification vote?
Yes. Oh, that's where we are. Certification
No,
of
you're good.
2022 primary elections. So we have the results, the unofficial results. Legal counsel, Commissioner will make a motion. Move to approve the.
Yes, the unofficial results as of September 12th, 2022.
Okay. Can I get a motion? So we have a motion to approve the unofficial results from September 12th, 2022, as provided, as of September 12th, 2022, right? 9:29 p.m., right? And provided in this report. Motion made by Vice Chairman Crisostomo and seconded by Commissioner Gumatauta. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. So the unofficial results have been accepted. It's now official. Now official. All right.
All right.
Maria, anything else? So this is just a sample, and what we're going to do is they're going to draw numbers, correct? Yeah.
But we want you to look at the ballot design for this yellow copy we just made it bigger, so that's what it looks. So the white copy in the packet is letter size. So what we did is we made it so that it looks exactly like what it's going to look on the, yeah.
Council, do you have any concerns with the ballot?
I have no issues with the proposed ballot.
There's no write-in for the Education Board?
No.
By law.
It's law, okay. All right. I do not have any. I do not have any questions or concerns with the ballot. Sorry. Do you need us to motion, Maria?
Yes.
All right, any discussion with regard to the ballots? If not, we need a motion to accept the ballot in its form.
Second.
Okay. Motion to accept the ballot in its form by Commissioner Moffitt, seconded by Commissioner Pinella. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Ayes have it, that passes. Just for record purposes, Commissioner Seville had to leave, right? Excused. What's next? Ratification of the 2022 general election candidates.
Madam Chair, pursuant to Title 17 of the Guam Code annotated Section 3102.3B and Title 3 Guam Code annotated Section 6110, and based on their filing with the Guam Election Commission for the 2022 general election, the following candidates for the Guam Education Board have met the requirements: Peter Alexis Diaz-Ada, Lourdes Mendiola Beneventi, Renate Santos Camacho, Maria Atalic Gutierrez, Ronald Lewis McNinch, Mary A.Y. Okada, Angel Regis Sablan, Joseph Cruz Santos, and Elaine Duenas Ulloa.
Need a motion to approve, to ratify?
Can we do it all together?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So motion to,
Ratify.
Yeah, motion to ratify the candidates.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move a motion to ratify the candidates for Guam Election Board. I'm sorry, Guam Education Board.
motion on the floor to approve the candidates for the Guam Education Board by Commissioner Pinello, seconded by Commissioner Moffitt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Right. Ayes have it. No discussion.
Madam Chair, pursuant to Title 12 Guam Code annotated Sections 79101 and 79102, and Title 3 of the Guam Code annotated Section 6110, and based on their filing with the Guam Election Commission for the 2022 general election, the following candidates for the Consolidated Commission on Utilities have met the requirements: Nonito Vincent Blas, Melvin F. Duenas, Michael T. Limchaco, Simon A. Sanchez, Francis E. Santos, and Ricardo S. Umpinko.
Can I get a motion to ratify? Second? Yeah. Motion to ratify the candidates for the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, made by Commissioner Gumatao, seconded by Commissioner Pangilinan. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Candidates ratified.
Madam Chair, the next item on the agenda on new business is a Precinct Official Recruitment Program. I've spoken preliminarily with University of Guam and Guam Community College, and I have a proposed draft of the course outline. I'm proposing I, Maria Pangilinan, Director of the Guam Election Commission, I'm proposing that I teach a class at the University of Guam for both GCC and UOG students on elections administration. This will have 2 credit hours, and it will meet Fridays, 3 Fridays before the election, and 1 Friday after the election. And we hope to recruit precinct officials for this class. They won't charge them the regular credit costs. They will just charge them a recordation fee, which is much less than the cost for the credits. And we will have them in the classroom, sitting down, listening to what we do. And hopefully, with the help of the Guam Community College and the University of Guam, we can get students to help us and become excellent precinct officials.
Was this discussed with the 2
Yes,
institutions?
yes, Madam Chair. I discussed it preliminary. It still needs to get approval. But
Approval
I did
from,
both UOG, from you first, and then from University of Guam and GCC. I've talked, I've had initial conversation with both the president of the Guam Community College and the faculty of the School of Business and Public Administration. It will fall under the public administration program. So our students, ma'am, will get 2 credits, undergraduate or graduate, depending on what they qualify for, and they will get their 350 big ones.
so they have to be precinct officials?
Yes,
They have to
otherwise,
work as precinct officials?
yes.
Nice.
Can I have legal counsel weigh in on this?
I think I need to look into that requirement.
All right, so can we table this for the next meeting?
Ma'am, if I can work with legal counsel, and if I can modify it so that it meets legal requirements, may I get your approval should they, so that I will, legal counsel will make sure I'm compliant with the laws, and if I can just get your approval so that I can work on getting the approvals also at the university and the GCC level.
Approval is contingent on legal review.
Because one of my concerns is generally when someone does an internship or practicum as part of getting credit for college credits, they shouldn't be paid.
Yes, they can be paid. They can be paid. There are paid internships. Yeah.
Okay. So that was my only concern, one of my concerns. My other concern is just, if you're having a hard time filling precinct officials for whatever reason, making these individuals forced to work may be, well, I'll talk about it with you.
All right, so all of this is contingent upon the approval from the commissioners?
Yes.
So shall we wait for legal counsel's review?
I think that'd be prudent.
Okay.
Tell them.
So legal counsel is going to review it.
Wait, but is the
There-
goal
there's
to
a- yeah.
be
You're
ready
talking about a
for this
contingent-
general election?
Yeah,
So
ma'am,
timely.
yeah, it's a matter of time, and to just teach the class. Okay, and then hopefully, they get the credits after they fulfill all the requirements, and one of the requirements is like a practicum or an internship working as a precinct official. In the upcoming
And this is
general.
only to supplement
Yes.
the public,
Yes.
It's not going to replace.
No.
Right, we won't have enough.
Right, it's not going to
Right.
replace party options, right, or public options, people in the public that come in and want to be precinct officials.
Right.
It should
Right.
augment, but, yeah.
I mean, are they going to be, like, the regular precinct officials? Will they be able to attend this class?
Yes. Yes, they can attend this class.
Yeah, so I mean, is there a limit to the number of students?
No.
If you have 350 precinct officials that may want to take this class?
Yes, we will, I'm going to ask for access to the
And then who's paying for their tuition?
$40.
Huh?
It would be $40 for them. It's just a recordation fee,
I just want to make sure everyone's treated
equally, yeah.
fairly, because regular precinct officials wouldn't have to pay for training.
I think it should be offered to the now precinct officials.
It will be.
And then in addition, whoever else wants to come,
It-
whoever else wants to take
Yeah.
the course.
It will
because
be. It will be.
There is a great need.
The big difference would be the time requirements for the training. So we will be meeting 12 hours as opposed to the 3-hour training for our regular precinct official training. Yeah.
So I don't think the commissioners have any concerns. And do you need a motion?
Yes, I want to get your approval contingent on meeting getting legal counsel advice.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move a motion to allow Maria to move forward with her class arrangement with UOG and GCC, contingent on legal review and approval by the board.
So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Pinala, seconded by Commissioner Gumatautau, in reference to Maria conducting these.
Thank you.
All those in
Aye.
favor? Aye. All those opposed? Nay. I'm sorry, the ayes have it. You were going to say something?
No, ma'am.
So is this contingent upon legal counsel's review?
Absolutely.
And guidance on that. All right. What do you have next?
Madam Chair, just real quick, I think we need to adjust the agenda for public comment. It's not on there.
Nice, sauce.
Yeah, so, yeah, we should add public comment.
All right.
We're gonna be able to adjourn.
So we have general election early voting site and schedule. Maria, is that, we've discussed that?
Already, yes.
Okay. Polling site assessments, that's going to be part of the
Work session.
work sessions, okay? Any other discussions? No. We do have public comment. Any comments from the public? If you do, please come forward, state your name.
I'm learning. My name is Juan Carlos Benitez. I'm the chairman of the Republican Party of Guam. I do come with some public comments, and I know that there's a lot of people looking at getting their number, so there's pressure over there. But I really think that there's some lessons to be learned about our early voting process that was found with this issue. And we have some recommendations coming up to look at a process where we got the lowest turnout in the history of Guam early voting and not do any corrections or take any lessons out of it, I think would be a mistake. I think after we've been looking and going through the early voting, which was around 25% of the voters that participated in this primary election, we noticed that around 65 to 70% of them, at this part, we haven't finished our numbers, were retirees and Gulf Guam employees. So there was definitely an underrepresentation of the private sector and the working class in Guam, based on the age and the composition of work. That makes us think that the timing and the hours that you were providing for the early voting was not conducive to private sector participation of the process. One being that you did not start till 10 in the morning. So if I had a worker that wanted to participate, he needed to leave earlier. By that time, he would reach lunchtime, and he would not come. So I would lose my entire morning on a private sector job. You would be facing similar situation with the 6 p.m. closing, because most private employers don't close till 5 p.m. And to get from works either in the north, south, and even some parts of the central to Tumon is problematic just to see if you had a chance to barely make it before that 6 p.m. cutoff time. Where the Republican Party is advocating that you start at 8 to 7 p.m. process on those work days and absolutely start a Saturday day. I understand you guys passed a resolution. I really would hope that you would reconsider that resolution of maintaining the same hours that you did during the work week, because we're going to end up with the same result. I understand that there's a weighing of costs and factors into consideration that you need to do, but I think that the main focus of the Election Commission should be on guaranteeing and doing everything to facilitate that the largest number of voters can exercise their right to vote and participate in an election process. And if it costs a little bit more, that's what it is. It costs a little bit more. But I don't want to face that we end up with a general election that suffers the same lower turnout as we had before, and an unfair and imbalanced representation of the electorate of the island. The tabular machines should not be used, so I'm very glad that I'm seeing the preliminary. You're looking at it. It is problematic. I understand that it's convenient, and it might be the future. It is not the present. Too many problems and concerns are with it. Today we're going to have everybody come here and pick numbers. They're picking up numbers because traditionally the persons that have the lowest numbers get additional votes. The first persons that you see in the ballot, when you have 15 votes to cast, you tend to cast those at the beginning and then go, oh, I forgot one person or one individual, and then you start erasing and going back and forth. It's extremely problematic on the electronic system. I really don't encourage it to be used unless it can be fixed. That brings me to the issue of the PAC. And let's be clear, it's a responsible Guam PAC has not filed. Everybody here knows that. They haven't filed 2 filings, not 1, but 2. So it's a question of whether they're going to be allowed to continue to interfere with this election. Either they come in and file and are transparent and where the donations are coming from, how much money they're spending, or we're facing an election where unlimited number of funds could be channeled through this organization and used to attack and undermine a candidate. That's what they did in the primary. You know, I hear people telling me it's $250 to reach the first ground. Go to their website. They bought their website. They have a professionally set up website with links and hotspots in it. That website alone costs you over $250, in addition to the fact that you could not go through the internet and not find those ads being pop up every time you went on YouTube or Facebook. It is absolutely use of funds. It is over $1,000 when I look at all the funds that they did. So to some degree, the Election Commission needs to face the reality. This PAC has violated Guam law, and if there's no penalty, you know, what message are we sending to the people past them? That is a concern to me to look forward. The other one, in today's business, we were supposed to look at the design of the general ballot. I think that we need to hold that because there's a pending inquiry and concern regarding the Attorney General election. Will the fact of having an absentee somebody run as a writing is in conjunction with the statute or not? I'm an attorney. I think it's a very interesting legal question when the entire purpose of having that election in the primary, which was also the cause of the delay of getting the results on this last primary process, is that only the 2 top vote getters make it to the general. So philosophically intriguing, I would like to know. More concerning and more intriguing to me is if the writing bond can happen and a candidate were to determine that they want to run for that office and they start a campaign, would that make them a candidate? And if they're a candidate, can they continue to work in Guam? And do they need to comply with all the requirements and filings of every other candidate as police records and providing on disclosure of financial information? If we're not going to be requiring those, you again is going to create an unbalanced situation where individuals might choose not to forego the traditional process of going through the primary election process and just wait to do a writing campaign on the general. These are concerning issues that I think the board should look at and consider. I think all of these issues should be considered before we finalize the ballot and go to the general election. Those are my comments. On further funding and allow individuals to bypass the requirements to run as a candidate into the ballot and leave those issues to be addressed after the general elections, I think would be a disservice to the voters in Guam. Thank you so much. I'll accept any questions if you have any for me.
Any questions from the commissioners? Nope.
My name is Ken Leon Guerrero. I have some comments. First of all, the biggest complaints I heard about the early voting was the lack of Saturday. A lot of people went down there apparently on Saturday only to discover that there was no opportunity. So I'm glad to hear that we're talking about Saturday. The second concern I have is about the hours. Last time we were doing the early voting, every time I drove through Agana in the early morning, I saw lines of cars for the early voting at 8 o'clock, at 9 o'clock. People were already waiting. I think starting the early voting at 10 o'clock is making it very difficult for one of the largest blocks of voters on the island, which is senior citizens and retirees who like to vote early. It'd be interesting to see if the Election Commission has any stats on the flow rate on the early voting in 2020 compared to the early voting this time. But I believe that we need to have the more hours available, especially in the early morning, because the early morning hours catches a larger group of people, and definitely have the Saturday hours. But again, 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I don't think that's enough. It should be the full day for the same reason I'm talking about. The second thing, I like the discussion that you were having about regional voting. In this day of shrinking government revenues and shrinking population, I mean, we've already closed down a couple of schools because we're losing students. I think it's a discussion that needs to be had with the public. I think that you should have a forum or something, or maybe town halls where people can come and voice their concerns on regional voting. I think that it would be very popular on that issue. So those were the two things, and I like the idea of having that class, because one thing I learned, as you may have noticed, I'm a little bit older, back when we used to teach civics in school, and our schools got us involved, especially at GW. They got students involved in the processes back in the 70s, and it instilled in me a lifelong participation in the political process that started back when I was a senior at George Washington Senior High School. I think that those are good. It's a good proposal that she's making right now, and I think it would do a lot to get more younger people involved in the process, and I hope that you guys move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leon. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, none. Our next meeting? Are we going to recess for this poll?
No,
We're going to adjourn, right?
adjourn, yeah.
And we're just going to poll?
Yes. So, ma'am, the next meeting would be September 21st. May we ask that you meet September 21st? That would give us time to approve the precinct officials and the precinct official handbook before we start training.
Okay. 5:30?
Hungan,
Commissioners?
5:30.
5:30, okay. So we need a motion to adjourn the meeting until the date.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move a motion to adjourn until September 21st, 2022 at 5:30 p.m.
Here?
Yes, here.
Here.
So there's a motion to adjourn until 5:30 p.m., September 21, 2022. That's a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, to the GC Conference Room, Suite 205, Oka Building, Tamuning, Guam, by Commissioner Pinella, seconded by Commissioner Moffness. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. The Guam Election Commission is adjourned until Wednesday, September 21, 2022, 5:30 p.m. We will be polling for placement today. Candidates are here waiting. All right.
Madam Chair, recommend that we take a 15-minute recess.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
15-minute recess. We're going to set up, the Guam Election Commission staff will be setting up for the drawing.